After an opening sequence gag that is making fun of sitcoms, of which is so painful to watch I'm not going to force you to sit through a clip of it, we find that Dot is now torn between the fact that there are two of the man she loves, and is uncertain about what that means for her, them, and their future. She even comes up with calling the Bob that we've had since Season 3 Glitch Bob to help herself and the audience to know who she is talking about. Speaking of the two Guardians, we cut to them hanging out at the diner and getting to know each other, trying to figure out who between them is the original Bob and who is the copy. And no, your ears aren't deceiving you. That's Michael Banyera, the original voice actor for Bob, back to play this new Bob that we see. It's kind of interesting to see two different voice actors who've played the same character interacting with each other in the show, and it adds to the general weirdness of things. It's an interesting dynamic to see at play, considering it was never done with the other character in his copy in Matrix and Enzo. Speaking of the Renegade, we find him in Lost Angles with some of the army, having them attack him with live ammunition as part of his training. Andrea is a little bit annoyed at this and tells her lover that it's time for him to rest. They won the fights against both Damon and Megabyte, and they're home and safe. The thought of not being able to fight anything doesn't sit well with Matrix, with him lighting up when a GameCube starts to fall. Matrix, Andrea, both Bobs, and Enzo all start heading to the cube to defend it against the user, though the Renegade states his copy shouldn't go into the game until they find out what Hexadecimal did to his icon. Dot stops them all from entering the cube, repeating the same order to the young sprite, while also preventing Glitch Bob from going in either, not being able to reboot from the last time. The GameCube itself, like some of the earlier games, is more just a fun parody than any sort of dire circumstances, with this one being a clear reference to Pokemon, complete with Frisket repeating his name while in a little Pikachu state. And of course, this line itself is just gold.
You keep creatures in cages and release them just to fight?
Yeah.
That is sick!
During the game, we find that Glitch Bob, Enzo, and Andrea all hang out at Al's place. The pair do their best to cheer GB up, saying that it's not bad to be a copy, with Enzo pointing out the fact that he's one. I'm actually a little surprised that they never bring up that technically Andrea is also a copy, since the game sprite is actually a backup of the original girl that Enzo met when he was a kid. During this, we also see a few binomes who are upset that they're not getting the same respect they did when they were viral and working for Megabyte. The episode ends with Fong and Dot once again talking to each other, with the young woman having come to a particular conclusion when it comes to the two Bobs. Despite all they've gone through, Glitch Bob reminds her of all the tragedy, pain, and suffering that she and the rest of Mainframe have gone through since the Guardian was shut off into the web. Whereas Bob looks, sounds, and feels right, Dot explaining it like she feels like it's coming home. In Life's a Glitch, we start with Dot trying to talk to Nibbles, hoping that she'll be able to get him to remember her. Without Hexadecimal's powers, though, he's just a null and unable to do anything. Fong says that the tech boys that developed the firewall in Season 3 have made a game sampler that will let them take information stored in games in hopes of being able to reform those who were deleted by the cubes. This will do nothing for sprites deleted through other means though, and the game sampler itself means nothing for the rest of the series. After a scene where Dot and Mouse talk to each other with the businesswoman trying her best to figure out her feelings about both of the Bobs, Glitch Bob comes to Fong in hopes of having himself and Glitch separated. He fears that because the other Bob is so much like his original self, that everyone is preferring the other guy instead of him, which makes him think that he'll lose Dot if he doesn't do something. This fear is only further enforced when Fong is reluctant to give Glitch Bob access to the archives. As nearly the entire cast goes into the GameCube to supply the game sampler with info, the cube itself having a sequel to Rocky the Rabid Raccoon and having a lot of Star Wars references in it, Glitch Bob ends up getting access to the archives thanks to Mouse and spends the next several scenes doing his best to separate himself from the key tool with no real success. He eventually pulls up a vid window of the time he split Gigabyte into his 3 parts, and thinks it might work for him. He rushes into the war room, telling Dot that he needs to use a tear. She's more than a little shocked when the Guardian shrugs off a game in his excitement, stating that it's not like the Bob she knew. After our heroes in the game defeat Rocky, which involves them using a roasted chicken robot, and I can't believe I just said that out loud, Glitch Bob enters the tear after forming it into a portal and tries to separate it like he did before. It backfires big time, and we find the Guardian on the ground coated in some weird material. Doc gets the medical team from the Guardians and the supercomputer to get Glitch Bob, knowing that if anyone can help him, they can. Bob thinks he should also return to the supercomputer, feeling out of place with his memories only going up to being shot into the web. After failing to convince him to stay with her words, Dot makes her decision and kisses the Guardian, asking him to promise her that he'll never leave. He does so and follows up by asking her to marry him, which she accepts. The next episode, Nullbot for a Bride, is roughly 50% filler, as the episode consists of things like Dot trying on wedding dresses, a bachelor and bachelorette party, and other wedding setups that we've seen in pretty much every other show. And while I will admit seeing Dot, Mouse, and Andrea watching a strip show is a definite what the hell moment for me considering how this show first started, the main meat of the story comes down to Glitch Bob's life slowly fading away, the coating he's got around being so strong that nothing the Guardians have can break through. The only major development on the wedding side of things is the fact that Enzo thinks his father should join in, even if he's still a null, and ends up grabbing onto Nibbles and causing the viral code that Hexadecimal gave him to be transferred into the null, restoring Wellman's intelligence. Fong gives him a robot body so he can walk Dot down the aisle. With the Guardians unable to do anything for Glitch Bob and his energy fading fast, Turbo says his goodbyes before leaving his old friend to die. It's here that we see Bob in a white room, confronted by a giant version of Glitch, several different key tools flying into him. In the real world, we see the black goop leave Bob, forming into all the key tools and reviving the Guardian, as well as separating him and Glitch and upgrading the latter of the two. It's then revealed by the medic that's been working on Bob that the code that he has doesn't match up with what's on file, meaning that he's the copy. Cutting to the wedding, which in the original episode we've actually been bouncing back and forth between the hospital and the wedding the entire time, we see Glitch Bob come right in time for the if there's any reason why these two shouldn't be married bit. He states that he still loves Dot, but after stopping both Bobs from fighting each other, the businesswoman tells that she has made her decision, going with a Bob that she is about to marry. As Glitch Bob leaves the wedding, Glitch flies off his arm and onto Bob's, confirming the fact that he's the original. Heartbroken with the knowledge that he's the copy, the degraded Bob starts to leave, saying that he's already caused enough trouble for everyone. The wedding starts to continue until Glitch starts acting up.
Happening to me!
What's happening to you? Look at him!
Yep, turns out that the new Bob has been Megabyte this entire time. And while things will be explained a little bit more in the next episode, for now we actually get to sit through a pretty enjoyable fight sequence between Megabyte and Bob. When asked why he did this, the virus simply responded with it amused him before blinding Bob, stealing a kiss from Dot, and causing havoc by scaring the mainframers inside the wedding hall. Megabyte grabs Specky, the Binome who has become a bit of a running background character since Season 2, and it's revealed after Bob and Matrix finds him unconscious in the wedding hall that Megabyte has become a Trojan horse virus, capable of replicating the appearance of others. It's within Crouching Binome Hidden Virus where we finally get a lot of the answers for questions that we've been having for a while now, as well as many powerful character moments. After reviewing the wedding tapes, they're able to confirm that Megabyte is indeed a Trojan, and that Turbo wants to send a full team to stop the virus. Bob says no, though, wanting to try and change him as they did with Hexadecimal, using the She virus as a point to say that if they hadn't befriended her and made her good, the entire net would have been destroyed by now. Bob then cuts the call, saying that they'll call Turbo only if they need him. It's then that we find out what's just been going on between Bob, Glitch, and Megabyte to explain everything that's happened before. As we know from the exposition Bob gave us earlier, key tools and Guardians share code with one another. When Megabyte crushed Glitch back in Season 2, there was a momentary exchange of code between the two, which included Bob's own code. This explains a lot of things with a simple answer, including why Bob couldn't heal Turbo, and why he was partially degraded by the web, since he's missing part of his own code. Things are also getting worse around Mainframe, as not only are binomes that are wishing to be viral again, called neovirals, are picketing the principal office, but we also see that Mike the TV has made an announcement to Mainframe that Megabyte has returned and to trust no one. It doesn't take a genius to realize that it's really the virus in disguise trying to cause chaos. While Fong tries, and fails, to calm the citizens down, Dot and Bob try to talk to each other to get ready to fight against Megabyte, with Dot clearly beating herself up over the failed wedding. Some encouraging words from our guardian gets her mind back into place, though. Cutting over to Al's place, we find that the Neovirals are once again talking about wanting to be in control before they're approached by Mike the TV. It's shown that Bob was right in thinking that the virus took to television's appearance as he shifts back to normal and demands that the Neovirals willingly hand over their PIDs to him or suffer the consequences, showing him infecting Al's waiter, though it's a different kind of infection than what we're used to from Megabyte. In the principal office, Dot comes up with a plan which she states she's more confident in than she was with Damon. She knows Megabyte, and thus knows his vices and ways to take him down. They set up a fake gateway command, tricking the virus into stealing it and trying to use it to get into the supercomputer, his regular MO. They spring an ambush on Megabyte, Matrix using gun to track him and eventually shoot the virus, forming a tear around him that Bob turns into a portal, sending him into the brig. After a bit of chatting with Megabyte where he asks what the heroes plan to do with him now that they've captured him, Bob tells the virus that he doesn't believe in deletion and is instead going to try his best to reprogram the virus into a sprite.
So, a fate worse than deletion, and they call me a monster.
When the scan finally finishes, it tells us that there is nothing there, and that the Megabyte they've captured turns out to be nothing more than an alias, a hologram. This leads Bob to warn Dot that it means that Megabyte is in the war room with the rest of the cast, Frisket reforming into the virus and infecting a bunch of binomes as well as Wellman's robot body. With everyone separated and Megabyte in the war room, the virus opens up a vid window to the entire system, telling everyone his plans. This time, however, it's quite a different goal than what the virus had before.
There is no grand scheme here. This is about revenge. Prepare yourselves for the hunt.
And that, my friends, is how they ended Reboot. No, I'm not kidding you. With the budget cuts they had, Mainframe relied on a tried-and-true method of leaving their show off on a cliffhanger in hopes that it would get interest enough in making another season. Which, considering it worked for them on Season 2 of Reboot and in Season 1 of Beast Wars, it was an honest attempt. Unfortunately, that never happened, and to this day, we have yet to see a proper resolution to the show outside of a webcomic known as Paradigm Lost. I won't get into the comic now since it doesn't have much, if anything, to actually do with the ending of Reboot, or Season 4 for that matter, but I thought I had to mention it as it's one of the few things they did to try and give us a proper conclusion. And now that we've completely done with the recap of the season itself, I have got to say that the overall quality and care for Season 4 makes it feel like a bit of a downgrade from Season 3. Part of this is understandable, what with Mainframe Entertainment losing a huge chunk of their budget and having to squish things in, but I also think it might have been a better idea to instead focus more on one story idea and flesh it out among the fourth season instead of splitting it up like what we got. I think the thing that hurt the show the most, though, was the changes that the characters faced with this new season. While most of them resemble themselves and how they've acted in previous seasons, there are huge key differences that can make the viewer go, wait, what? Why are they doing this? Especially if you've watched the series back to back. While it's important to keep in mind the time difference between the end of Season 3 of Reboot and the start of Season 4, which was about a 3-year difference, there are a few things here and there that, mixed with the story, really hurts the season overall in my mind. Hexadecimal is, perhaps, one of the characters who changed the least out of the group, at least to begin with. She's still not exactly the most sanest of characters, but she's pacified to the point where she's friendly to the rest of the cast, and is fully embracing her love for Bob. That aspect of her kinda takes over how she acts though, especially once she becomes a sprite and relatively more sane, asking pointed questions to Dot to ensure Bob is free for the snaring. She also actually builds up a small relationship with Enzo that I felt like could have actually gone somewhere had the creators had more time to do with it. Perhaps her highlight moment, though, is her returning to becoming a fully insane virus that, despite her chaotic mind and powers, ends up sacrificing herself to save everyone. Probably the best character out of Season 4 if I had to argue about it. Speaking of viruses though, Damon's just kind of there. She has very little character outside of her desire to infect the entire web, though we do get to see a few moments here and there, such as her chat with Andrea about love, and her reaction to Hexadecimal's change. Her powers are pretty much an instant win for her in any situation, and it's because of a poorly defined loophole that allows our heroes to save the net, since they didn't even actually beat the super virus. She did so herself. While she serves as a valid threat as a holy crap she's stupid strong kind of being, the fact that there was little to no effort on her part to do what she needed to do kinda takes out all the suspense. In a way, you can think of Damon as more of a natural disaster like a tornado than an actual character, and because of this I felt like there was a lot more they could have actually done with her. Bob also changes fairly little from Season 3 outside of two huge aspects added to his character: his reluctance to delete others, and his mission to reformat viruses. Now, I call out this first trait mostly because before Season 4, it was portrayed by Bob that the reason that he acted in protection of others, even viruses like Megabyte, like how he had saved him in the combo game, was actually part of his Guardian code. It was programmed into him to mend and defend from the get-go that even virals like Megabyte should be protected if they're in a position of danger. But here, it feels more like Bob's become more of a pacifist character. To bring up another Mainframe series, it kind of feels very much like how Optimus Primal changed from Beast Wars to Beast Machines, where the character lost much more of his combative nature. While Bob's change isn't anywhere near as severe as Primal's, it is noticeable. The other aspect, the mission to reformat viruses, I feel does actually fit with his character, but the way it's presented is mishandled, where Mainframe was an experiment that just didn't work. I find it really hard to believe that the same Guardian that we've been with for over 3 seasons would have a goal like that while not letting anyone else in the system know about it. That, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I vastly preferred the Glitch Bob design to the original. Moving on to the more changed characters, Matrix sadly has backslid from all the progress that he made in Season 3. For all the talk of how he's not like Megabyte, how he's proven that he doesn't have to delete and destroy to be like the virus, we see him killing Guardians freely in Season 4, people he knows are not in control of their actions. Things aren't helped at all by how the Renegade is treating Hexadecimal throughout the season either. While interactions between the two characters never happened in the original series enough for us to say how the two would react to one each other, this doesn't feel like the man we saw Matrix become last season, especially to a virus who has proven herself to be an ally. It's also probably a point against him that for most of this series he's either in pissed Matrix mode because of the war and losing Andrea, or is sidelined for the wacky hijinks that was My Two Bobs. And speaking of Megabyte, or Mega Bob as I like to call him when he's playing our cast for fools, what was done to him here was probably the worst out of the group, barring one other character. Now, while I don't doubt the virus would indeed go along with trying to turn everyone against Bob, or hell, even the marriage scheme, I just can't see Megabyte doing general hero work and not trying to take advantage of things while no one is looking. With the amount of time that he was in the principal office, hell, near the archives of all things, Megabyte would have definitely tried to do something to establish control, or at the very least taken things to make his return to power easier. The closest he gets to some of his old ways is suggesting to Dot that he might be better to return to the supercomputer, but drops it rather quickly. His plan to do the hunt, as he calls it in the end, also seems very generic for Megabyte. The virus was always about making elaborate plans and doing his best to ensure his victory, so it seems so weird that everything ends with going, "Nah, I'm just gonna chase you all down and infect ya." Which leads us to the last character that actually gets a moment to shine in this season, and is the one who I think suffers the absolute most out of it all, Dot Matrix. Despite her words and the kiss at the end of Season 3, we see Dot revert backwards just like her brother, trying to hide or shrug off her love for Bob, to the point where she tells Hexadecimal flat out that they're just friends. And while she acts reasonable enough during the fight with Damon, trying to prioritize things to help out everyone the best she can, she's put into the unwinnable situation of the whole My Two Bobs fiasco. Honestly, I don't think anyone in the audience was all that really convinced about Mega Bob when it came to believing him to be the original character. Not after everything we've done with Bob. And while I can see just why and how Dot could make the decisions to go with someone who reminded her of more pleasant times, it's just very difficult to write a romantic situation like this, especially with only 4 episodes to devote to it, as well as having the 2 men in her life being, well, the exact same man. I think the part that just makes it feel so bad is that we've been with Bob the entire time in Season 3, and with Damon's War. We've developed ties with him, and even with the prospect of him being a copy of the original character, he's still the one that we're all here for, and the one that we actually all care about. It feels odd, to say the very least, to see Dot switch over to Mega Bob. And sad to say, that's pretty much it on the character front, as the rest of the cast isn't around long enough or get enough spotlight to really shine for me to tell you very much. Andrea is damseled halfway through the series, and outside of a few choice moments with young Enzo, who pretty much acts like his Season 1 counterpart for most of this season, there's not much to say. Hell, I would love to talk about Wellman Matrix a little bit more, considering how he started so many things in the series plot-wise, but despite the whole fact of bringing him into the show into the first place, little is done with him outside of him creating the Gateway Command again. Overall, Season 4 had a lot of potential, and I felt like some of that was squandered. Not to say that the creators didn't try, but for what stories and ideas they had and wanted to tell, it just didn't fit the budget that they had. It felt like if the entire 8-episode or 2 made-for-movie run they had was focused entirely on Damon, making her more interesting or letting the characters breathe a little bit more, it could have been great, fantastic even. Though the plot hole about the Guardians purging viral infection probably would have either been better explained or done away completely. And with that, the Reboot Retrospective comes to a close. I thank you all for following a silly guy like me recount his favorite TV show and share his thoughts and opinions with you all. But just so you know, this isn't the end of what I've got planned to do. Not even close. First off, before anything else is said, yes, I do plan on doing more retrospectives in the future. A lot of people seem to enjoy these more than any of my other content, so I'm going to be trying to do my best to produce them as long as you all keep watching. That said, I'm not going to be able to do these all the time. As you've actually seen by the lack of content on my channel as of late, focusing just on the retrospectives means I can't really do much of anything else, and I'd rather not go months at a time without giving you guys something. So what I've decided to do this. I'm going to be giving you all a brand new show idea to watch and use while you're waiting for the next retrospective. It's called Background Check, and the idea behind it is to basically give you guys mini retrospectives about your favorite characters and stories. If you ever watched my Marvel's Avenger Alliance videos back in the day, you'll recognize this new show as a reworked lore format. Basically, I want the ability to talk about my other favorite shows, characters, games, and whatnot, but not spend months at a time rewatching an entire series and researching every tiny little thing about it to give you guys a complete rundown like I have been doing. The first episode is actually already being worked on as of this video, and it should be out soon, user willing. I'm also finally getting around to that getting the program idea I talked about ages ago, where I watch shows that I've never seen before and give my thoughts about them. Unlike Background Check and the retrospectives though, these will be very much unscripted, so this will be a little bit more off the cuff and hopefully easier for me to just put out for you guys so you have some content instead of waiting for months at a time. The first batch of the Getting the Program episodes will be about the first season of Ruby. But I think the thing that you guys all want to know the most is what my next retrospective series is going to be about. Well, let me tell you. It's a series that starts in history over 1,000 years ago, where superstition and the sword ruled. It was a time of darkness. It was a world of fear. It was the age of gargoyles.